Welcome back to PEEPanEIP. This is episode 131 and I'm your host Pooja Ranjan. In today's episode, we are excited to explore EIP-7549, a proposal aimed at enhancing the Ethereum consensus layer. This proposal aims to make Casper FFG client more efficient by reducing the average number of pairing needed to verify the consensus rules. Proposed in November 2023 and authored by dapplion, this proposal is currently in the review status and has made a place into the Pectra upgrades included lists. We are joined by dapplion, an Ethereum client developer, and also the author of the proposal to provide us an in-depth understanding of Proposal 7549, its implication, and what changes it will bring for the Ethereum mainnet. Hi, Dapplion. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
For people who are new to the series, Dapplion has authored multiple EIPs and have joined a series of PEEPanEIP to talk about them. Link to his earlier talks are available in the description. Once again, welcome back, and can we maybe start with giving a brief introduction about yourself and your motivation towards involvement with Ethereum and EIPs in specific?
Yeah, of course. So, hello, I'm dapplion, your friendly lion cordet. So, I studied aerospace engineering back in the day and very quickly realized that that was not my thing. It was very structured, very militaristic, very corporate. And at the time, Ethereum started to become a thing. And it was like this new world of possibilities, anarchism, and community. And it attracted me way more. So I completely changed fields. And it has been such a great journey since then. I started with DAppNode and then very quickly got into core development through Lodestar. And now I'm developing the Lighthouse consensus client with Sigma Prime. And just helping here and there. I mean, I'm not crazy researcher like some other folks, but trying to help everywhere I can. And yeah, just been a hell of a journey.
Not a crazy researcher, just a friendly lion. Friendly developer lion. Yeah. Very sweet. I know we are going to have an overview of a very interesting proposal, and I'm aware that there is a presentation. So without further ado, let's peep in.
Sure. Thank you for the intro. So I'm going to talk about today about EIP-7549. So just to give you a rundown what's going to happen. So just to bring everyone to the same page, explain what is an attestation, what is a community index, why do we want to remove it, and why was there in the first place if we want to remove it. And then just basically a mascot, security considerations and status. So very basic, Ethereum has a consensus layer and protocol now, which is called the beconchain. It's a proof of stake system where we have blocks and then other participants in the chain, like validators, those who give stake to the chain in order to participate in consensus. Once every 6 minutes, they issue a vote. With this vote, they attest. That's why they're called attesters. And they vote for two things at once. The first one is something called LMD Ghost, which you can think about as like a short-term vote, like basically Bitcoin would work or Ethereum would work back in the day, just to choose what's the immediate head at the time. And then the second vote is the Casper FFG. It's a finality gadget such that if we get enough votes, we have a very strong cryptoeconomical finality. That block will never be reversed. Like in Bitcoin case, we could technically have a reorg all the way to Genesis. It will be very unlikely, very expensive, but it's possible. In the case of Ethereum, that would only happen if 2/3 of all the stake gets burned, which today it's like, I don't know, between 10 and $20 billion. So these two votes get packed in a data structure that's called the attestation. The attestation is the wrapper around the attestation data which you vote for. And we have these fields. So as you can see at the bottom, we have the source and target, that's the FFG vote. Then we have the block root, that's the LMD Ghost vote. And then we have two pieces of metadata. The first one is the slot, which is important just for timing and know where this attestation belongs. And the index, which is which committee you are assigned to vote. And that's what we want to remove. So why removing this thing? The problem with this index being here is that it makes the attestations between different committees different. Today in the beconchain, I'm going to explain later why. We used to require this index, but we don't anymore. So now we have validators in different committees casting the same votes, so casting the same FFG vote and casting the same LMD vote, but the thing they are signing over is different. What that means is that they cannot be aggregated, which that would be an interesting segue. In the beconchain, the signature scheme that we use is BLS, which is excellent for aggregation of large amounts of participants. I think now, let's say we have in every committee 500 participants. So we would have 500 individual keys voting for the same vote. But in reality, everyone on the same slot is very likely to vote for the same thing. So we have 500 times 64 amount of votes that they are it's the same, constant, like the same LMD votes, same FFG vote, but the thing they sign over is distinct. And that means that we cannot aggregate them. And the problem is efficiency. So there are multiple users and consumers of Ethereum that would benefit from being able to aggregate more things. So the first one and the most important one would be light clients or anyone that wants to prove finality in a constrained environment. For me, the most interesting ones would be bridges between Ethereum. So say that we want to make a trustless bridge between Ethereum and Solana, or Ethereum and the Gnosis chain, or Ethereum and Bitcoin. Today, these bridges are run with either multisigs or some protocol that does not implement full consensus. If we could implement full consensus, we would have trustless protocol that cannot be, if there are no bugs, but it cannot be hacked because someone got into the computer of this person and stole the private key. And I don't know, I'm very bullish about that. That would be really cool to just make a bunch of really crazy bridge exploits obsolete. But today that is very expensive because we have to check much more signatures, and therefore it's more expensive. If we can reduce that by a factor of 64, that's very significant. And it could take a protocol that today is way too expensive to something that could be achievable. So first point. The second one is not only like clients, but basically everyone would benefit from these efficiency gains. And that would be for attesters themselves. So anyone running the beconchain, validators would see their CPU reduced. Not only that, but because now everyone signs over the same thing, we can put more attestations in the same block because we can aggregate them more concisely. We don't have to duplicate all these data so much, and we can use a more efficient bit packing. What that means is that for the same block size, so without increasing how much kilobytes the block has, we have more votes. So we can increase the amount of participation that can go into a block. That's not really relevant in good network conditions, but when the chain has problems, it's really relevant. Consider a situation where some client has a block production bug such that 1 in or like 3 in every 4 slots cannot produce a block. We would have a chain where everyone can attest, but we only have 1 block every 4. What that means is that in order to achieve finality, everyone that's casting these votes, they have to go on chain, so they have to be included in a block in order to count towards finality. If this type of bug, where 75% of proposals go offline, happens today, that the chain will stop finalizing because of a block production bug. But with this change, we increase by a factor of 4 the amount of vote space in a block. So we would need now to have offline at least like 80 to 90% of proposals in order to have the same failure mode. So it just makes the chain more resilient, also to reorgs and a bunch of stuff. Like the same, so point number 3, the same also applies to tester slashing, because so these attestations now are much bigger. In the case of a mass slashing event, we will have many more participants in each attestation. So attester slashing will slash much more people than they do today. So assume in the unlikely case that someone wants to attack Ethereum and does a 66% attack, maybe now it will take, inventing the numbers, say 1 week to just include all this data on chain. With this, it will take a factor of 4 less, I think. So what makes is that now we can have accountability of attacks in a tighter time window. So the chain is more resilient in case some sophisticated attacker tries to like dodge this accountability. Just to narrow down on this, I think this visualization is really good. What I was talking about, that we have all these votes where the index is different. In every block, now we have a lot of attestations. So this will be the vertical. So you see at slot 0, we have 64 distinct attestations for technically the same vote. And then on the next slot, we have the same 64. With this EIP, we can collapse everything. And in the optimal case, we will have a single attestation per slot, provided that everyone votes the same, which may not be the case. But usually we have maybe 1 or 2 distinct attestations. And yeah, so I think just to bring the concept home for the more efficient packing, shout out to Mikhail, who did an analysis and what would be the safe. So we are targeting, you can see here at the middle of the chart, we are about 1 million validators. So we actually reduce the count of attestations on the block from the current 128 to 8. But because we have so much block space per attestation, we actually achieve much more block space, but with the same attestation space. So you can see that the blue line and the red line kind of cross, and that's what we want to target. Cool. So I hope I have justified why it's such a good thing to remove it. And now the next question is, why was that in the first place? So I'm linking here a talk by Justin Drake that he did in Istanbul. It's really interesting. I recommend to everyone. It just talks about all the basically face palms of the beconchain design, which it's a bit harsh to call them face palms, but kind of is nowadays. Anyway, just imagine here that says like the whole move attestation index. So what happened is that on the old times, I'm talking 2016, 2018, the way that researchers thought that we were going to scale Ethereum was with something called execution shards. So today in the chain, we have block production and validation. We were going to shard both things. So we were going to have 64 block producers with 64 attesters, and then a bunch of cross links. And it was very complicated. It never came to fruition. But because we had this like per shard block production and validation, it was important that when you vote for something, you specify which shard specifically you are saying that's correct. So that's why from the beginning, we were signing over the index. What happened is that on 2020, Vitalik, well, some people before him, but this is kind of the pivotal moment that changed everyone's minds. Basically, the research community understood and agreed that execution shards was not the best path forward, but instead we should do rollups. And what that means is that now in L1, we have a single block producer. So there is not really a need now to sign over the index. The problem is if you look here at the timelines, this post came up on October 2020, the final release of the specs for the beconchain on November. So just a month later, but it was not, I mean, the beconchain launch was very chaotic and it took a lot of effort. So it was definitely a big decision to just go ahead and remove the index. And people were not paying attention to this. The minds of everyone were like busy with just launching the chain and making sure the clients were safe and everything. So no one paid attention. So that's why sometime later, I mean, and then we did withdrawals and the merge and all these things. So kind of the last 1 or 2 years has been a more of like relaxed time in research time. And basically just a bunch of people just talking were like, we should do that now. So that's how basically the IP came to be. So just to wrap up some MISC and security considerations. So something that no one has really complained, but could be an issue when you sign over things and you move something outside of this signed container, you risk that data for being corrupt. Attestations are broadcast over P2P. So if we move the committee index outside of the signed container, that piece of data can be mutated. That's not really a problem. So there is a single combination of public keys that can make a VLS signature correct. So it doesn't matter how we represent that and where we put it, because we only need to know the number, but the number cannot be corrupted. Like if someone on the P2P changes this number, then the attestation will be invalid, which you can do anyway. You can just change any byte in the decision and make it invalid. So it's not really an issue. The next one is more spicy. So the first block after the fork will have 0 attestations. Why is that? So going back to this chart, the attestations are a lagging object. So when you produce an attestation at slot and that attestation gets included in the next slot. Well, a next or up to one epoch. So the problem is that blocks on the fork that include this EIP, which now is Electra, can only include attestations from the same fork, but not the prior, because the attestation data structure has been changed. So the first block, basically all the previous attestations are from the previous fork, so they are different type and incompatible and cannot be added. So that's something that we didn't notice at the start. And during the interop, there was a discussion about what are we going to do about that. The consequences basically is that we lose 1/32 of FFG votes. Everyone that is unlucky to be assigned to the last slot in the fork will get inactivity penalties just for one epoch. It's not too bad. That's something that randomly you get as a staker once a day. But still, it's kind of weird and annoying. The problem is that all the solutions are complicated and will add a lot of technical debt that's undesirable. We could maybe multiplex the type or just change the rules, but all the solutions look really ugly. The thing is that it's not really unsafe because these votes cannot be included on chain, but they can still be included in the fourth choice for LMD Ghost. So any sort of reorg attacks or things that we thought were possible, they are not really. So we're not going to do anything. And if you are unlucky to be assigned to the last slot, then it's fine. It's just one slot. It's not too bad. And then the last thing, so if we are gonna remove it, if you have been paying attention to the specs, we are actually not removing it and we are not moving it. So the index is remaining inside of the attestation data. It's just that we are setting it to 0 as a fixed value, and that will be checked as part of block verification rules. The reason for that is if we choose to remove the field and we change attestation data, we will not actually break, but make much more difficult to include slashings on chain. So slashings have to be able to be included on chain for a very long time, say 1 year or 2. For what we were talking about before attacks. Attacks must be able to be attributable and proven on chain safely. So we need to have very large margins that even if the attack happened last month or attack happens and then the chain doesn't have block production, so things cannot be included timely, that we still can economically slash everyone so that they can be accountable. So keeping the index as is and just setting it to 0 makes that much more easy, because now what you sign as an attester and gets included into an attester slashing is the same. We don't have to change the rules. And finally, what's the status of this? So some unfortunate consequence of this EIP is that its complexity was not well estimated at the beginning. So the Pectra scope has been very large, and this EIP was included in the beginning with not the promise, but the idea that it was not very complex, which is true on the spec. So the spec is very small, but then when you implement it, it's huge. And that's because attestations are everywhere. They touch the beconchain, they touch P2P, they touch the validator client, APIs, slasher, DB. So just changing the type is a lot of busy work. As you can see, this is the diff for Electra in Lighthouse, which it's mostly just the attestation. The name you can consider here, that is Electra attestation changes. And it's just, you see 100 files, a lot of lines. So that was a bit unfortunate at the beginning when we were considering to include this EIP or not. But I want to make the case that ZK Tech is progressing really fast. And by when this gets included, maybe in like 9 months or so, it's very possible that this could be extremely useful. And as I was saying, it will be extremely bullish that thanks to this EIP, we can enable all these like trustless applications that are really beneficial for the chain. So we have to do this anyway, because we need to clear technical debt. And if we don't do it now, we have to do it on the next fork. So it's going to suck anytime that we have to do it. So now it's not that bad time. And yeah, so apologize to core devs. I'm also feeling the heat because I have to do this PR myself too. And yeah, this is getting included in Pectra. we are choosing the mascots, and I'm voting for Giraffe. I hope you agree too. But yeah, the status is included. Almost everyone has it fully implemented. It's going to be part of the next DevNet, which should be live very soon. And that's all. Thank you so much for your attention, and open to questions.
Nice presentation. It provided answer to many basic questions like what is attestation, why it is being removed from where it was earlier, and why was it designed the way it is in the first place. The proposal suggests that after the upgrade, the improvement will be 64 times of what we see today. That's like huge improvement. And I think short but sweet presentations covered the entire EIP in a very decent way. I would like to first understand here about your inspiration behind this EIP. You mentioned about it's updating the technical debt. Just assuming you are also running nodes for Ethereum. Was there any personal experience or insight that drove you towards this change, or was it always known this is just a proposal to get it fixed now?
Sure. So the actual motivation for this, I was collaborating with two very skilled cryptographers and developers from ChainSafe, where I was working before, Timothy and Eric. And they were working on, so they have already done a ZK circuit to prove the beconchain consensus, but with the Altair like client protocol. And next, they were looking into proving the actual full consensus. And looking at their challenges and trying to understand things quickly, we saw that having to do so many things was a pain in the ass. And I knew back in my mind that we had this technical debt opportunity to clean up. So I checked in with other researchers like, hey, we should do this. Like, is this a good idea? And they're like, yeah, we should have done that like a year ago. So that was the motivation to write the EIP.
Very well. And talking about collaboration, I'm curious to understand here, like, were there other key stakeholders or organizations within the Ethereum ecosystem were involved in working on this proposal? I'm just trying to refer to any staking pool or people who are doing solo staking. Yeah, in general, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for this one, not really. It's not a user experience change at all. It's mostly something that either you as someone that's building these constrained applications would notice or appreciate, or some researcher that's like intimate with the prior spec and the current spec, and that you notice this anomaly that should be fixed.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. This is mostly performance-based. So yes, got the idea here. Let's move into the implementation complexity. You mentioned that the spec was kind of under-evaluated, the complexity at the time. So what are the main challenges that you may foresee in implementing EIP 7549? And what kind of difficulties are we looking at for the testing team when it is included for the next DevNet?
So I think it's not very complex in itself. Like it's not something that's really, really difficult. It's just something that's annoying. It's a lot of busy work because, as I was saying, almost everything in the beconchain code base has an attestation type. So you have to touch a lot of files. There is a lot of logic that you may have to duplicate. So we may have some like silly bugs on the P2P layer, or someone that forgot to like set the thing to 0. But I think most of the bugs on the last interop were already squashed. So maybe with a couple more round of testing, that should be fine. Like it's not something that's gonna like break us or in any way.
It's so relaxing to hear that. I'm sure Paritosh and team must be being very happy hearing about this now. All right. Talking about the compatibility, like, are there any backward compatibility issue that needs to be addressed? And also, this EIP, I understand, is mostly for the CL team, like CL layer. Is there anything specific that needs to be looked into by the EL team for this proposal implementation?
Yeah, so for the EL side, there is no effect at all. This is a purely consensus layer change. For the consensus layer, because it changes the block structure and the decision structure, it's backwards incompatible. So that's why we need a hard fork. But for most stakeholders, they don't have to do anything. So attestations are ephemeral objects, so that's fine. However, anyone that deals with attestations would have to make some work. So explorers would have to update how they read these objects to understand who has participated. Also, anyone that's doing remote signing, so the Web3 signer from the consensus team or probably Vouch would have to update slightly how they work because the data structure has changed. They are used to do that for blocks. So hopefully it's not that too bad to do the same for the attestation.
That is good to know. And I would also like to understand a little bit more about the performance. Like sometimes when we try to improve the chain, like we add new feature or maybe we try to enhance the performance, there are trade-offs. You did mention about inactivity penalty. I'm curious, do you consider that as the potential downside or if there are any more?
No, so what you're referring to is because of the change in data structure at the fork, every attester that's assigned at the very last slot will miss that slot. So just to give you context, anyone validating the chain, even the most professional stakers, miss about one attestation per day. So in this case, they would just experience this daily anomaly, but twice. So in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. It's negligible. So really, that's the only downside. That's why we should do this proposal. It's just a no-brainer. It's just a pure gain at the exchange of implementation costs, and that's basically it. It's just pure technical debt. It's something we should have done before, but we didn't because of a different idea of what we had to do in the future, and now we're just like reaping the benefits.
Right. No, it's good to know that we are trying to fix something which was not perfect at the time, but was kind of doing the job. I'm wondering what was the feedback? What was the community response to this proposal? Did you have to make any specific changes to the proposal or to the spec that may have been influenced by the response that has been received by the community?
I would say no. Like this proposal feels very straightforward. It doesn't have any controversy. It doesn't have really trade-offs. The only ones affected are the core devs that have to implement it. Those are the works groups, and they have complained a lot about the proposal. So it has been proposed to be dropped from the fork multiple times. So that's the group that we had to contend the most. But I think everyone is on the same page now after the interop. With respect to the community, basically everyone would just see a benefit, and there's not much basically wiggle room we have for the design other than security considerations or anything, which I think we have sorted out fine, or at least the decisions we have chosen are very strongly motivated. So at least so far no one has spoken against these decisions, but I don't see why that would happen because it's something that doesn't affect them too much, and we have good rationale for what we're doing.
Right. And you also mentioned in the presentation that it is something that is going to be working with other chains as well, like you talked about ZK. So it's always good to create and add these kind of proposals to the Ethereum chain to increase interoperability.
Yeah.
Very well. If we can maybe talk about the vision for Ethereum, you talked about rollup centric roadmap. I'm wondering how does EIP 7549 fit into this broader vision of a future of Ethereum?
Yeah, so this EIP doesn't shape that vision or affect it in any way. It just inherits the benefits of the vision. What's beautiful about the rollup centric roadmap is that it's a massive simplification in the design. That's why we are moving so fast now. Like the whole rollup thing with only focusing on sharding, it's just brilliant. The execution sharding was very complicated, and I think it would have taken so much longer to deliver in a safe way. And also it's like non-opinionated. So yeah, it's just an EIP that's benefiting from the fact that we now have like this massive simplification on the roadmap of Ethereum.
Like you guys love to call it as a no-brainer proposal.
Yeah.
Very well. Okay, if someone wants to maybe contribute to the proposal, where would you send our listeners to follow your work or maybe get in touch with you for more information about this proposal?
Sure. So for the proposal itself, ETH Magicians is the best forum. If you have questions or doubts or any changes on the design, that's the best avenue to go. Otherwise, you can raise your voice on ETH research if you want to more chatty about specific issues. You can reach me there, just DM me, or also Twitter is a good spot. But yeah, I don't think like for work, again, like the main thing with this is just implementation. So that would be more for the existing core devs or anyone that's thinking about joining the protocol fellowship. Just collaborating on this initiative would be a good opportunity. Maybe now we are nearing the end of implementation, but maybe just, I don't know, for testing or anything, there are always opportunities.
Right. I'm curious if there is any specific Discord channel where people can show up, not simple user, but perhaps infrastructure provider who may have to implement this in future.
So I don't know from the top of my head which one of the channels it would be, but just for the fact, just to not stall the call here, you can also go to the main one, just in all core devs, in case you don't know, and just ask. Maybe consensus there. Like, I'm not the best for organization in the LMD channel, to be honest.
I think the best page that you have said, Fellowship of Ethereum Magician, will definitely be helpful. I was just curious, like if people have more questions and getting into like quick answers, if there is any channel. Maybe in future they will create a specific channel for discussion of Pectra upgrade, and we can make use of that channel. We'll be closer towards the public testnet. Will be there.
Yeah, I think consensus there would be the best. So hit that hashtag.
That sounds good. Well, dapplion, on behalf of Ethereum community, I would like to thank you for joining us today and sharing all these useful information about this upcoming EIP. But before we wrap up, could you please share your final thoughts or any message for our listeners about this particular proposal, 7549, or for the future of Ethereum?
Yeah, as always, the most important feature of Ethereum is the capacity for anyone to run nodes so that we can keep the network decentralized and have this very important layer of resilient, jurisdictional independent node runners. So EIPs like this makes Ethereum cheaper to run, and we have so much more in store, like Force, Burkle, even one proposal that we will talk soon that's even making solo stakers more profitable than pools. So yeah, if you are on the fence, solo staking is always a great option, and you will make like such a insane contribution to the network and to this like new financial system.
Right. We are talking about client diversity, but at the same time, we are also talking about staking diversity. So yeah, join as many as people can join as solo staker. Would be good to have. Well, I appreciate you sharing this, and I hope our listeners and viewers will find this episode helpful. And they would also let us know their thoughts in the proposal in the comment section below. On this note, thanks to everyone following this special episode on Pectra Upgrade. Check out the useful links in the description, and we'll be back with another interesting EIP. Till then, keep sharing your love with Ethereum cat herders, and of course, do not forget to vote for the mascot. Giraffe it is for Pectra.